Botulism. Botulism is a disease which is very rare, but when it infects the human body, it is a very serious illness which is caused by certain kind of toxins which is secreted by the bacteria that attacks the human's body's nervous system, and in result it will cause this difficulty in breathing, muscle paralysis. So botulism is a disease. It is not that much common disease, but when it takes place, they produces or they secreted certain kind of toxins which is very harmful to the human body. When these hazardous toxins will enter into the human body, it will directly cause nervous system dysfunction, and in result it will causes difficulty in breathing, muscle paralysis, and if the disease is serious, it can lead to death also. This toxin is made by a bacteria which is named as Clostridium botulinum. Now these bacteria can produce the toxins in the food, wounds and intestines of infants. So the bacteria which is responsible to cause the botulism is Clostridium botulinum, and from the name of the bacteria botulinum, the disease name botulism is derived. This is a rod-shaped soil bacterium, and it is a saprophytic and a spore forming. Now spore forming means they will form a spores, and these spores in result going to harm the human body. The bacteria that makes the botulinum toxins are found naturally in many places, but it's very rare for them to make people sick. So these bacteria makes the spores which act like a protective coating. Now spores helps the bacteria to survive in the environment even in extreme conditions. These spores usually do not causes people to become sick even when they are eaten, but under certain conditions, these spores can grow and make one of the most lethal toxins. And the conditions in which the spores can grow and make the toxins are low oxygen or no oxygen environment, which is anaerobic process, low acid, low sugar content, low salt, a certain temperature range, and a certain amount of water. So these are the different parameters where spores can grow and make a very lethal toxins which is harmful for the human body, and in result it will going to cause a botulinum. For example, improperly canned, preserved or improperly cooked food can provide the right conditions for the spores which is produced by the bacterium Clostridium to grow and make a botulinum toxin. When the people eat these kinds of foods, they contains the botulinum toxin, they can become seriously ill or even die if they don't get proper medical treatment quickly. Each and every disease conditions will show some or the other kind of symptoms. So here the symptoms which is related to the botulism disease is, it includes a double vision, a blurred vision, dropping eyelids, difficulty in swallowing, dry mouth and muscle weakness. Infants with a botulism appears a lethargic, feed poorly, and they are constipated, have a weak cry and a poor muscle tone. These are all the symptoms of a muscle paralysis which is caused by the bacterial toxins in a food-borne botulism. Symptoms generally begins in 18 to 36 hours after eating that contaminated food which contains a toxin botulinum, but they can occur as early as 6 hours or as late as 10 days. The bacteria can also be isolated from the stool of a person with foodborne and infant botulism. So with the stool test, you can detect the disease botulism which is caused by Clostridium botulinum bacteria. And these are certain common symptoms. Through these symptoms, you can identify a person is having a botulism disease. So there are certain types of botulism which is listed here. We will look each one of them in detail. So the very first is the infant botulism. It can happen if the spores of the bacteria Clostridium botulinum gets into the infant's intestine through the contaminated food. The spores grow and produces the toxins very rapidly, which causes the illness, and in result it will going to cause the infant botulism. The next is a wound botulism. Botulinum spores can get into open wounds and slowly it will reproduce. So eventually releasing the toxic chemicals which is produced or secreted by the Clostridium bacteria. Now these type of botulism is associated with the drug users who inject the black tar heroin into the skin rather than their veins. This is one example. The next is a food-borne botulism. Now, it can happen by eating foods that have been contaminated with the botulinum toxins. Common sources of foodborne botulisms are the homemade food which has been improperly cooked, or it has been preserved for a very longer period of time, or a fermented. And it also can spread with a store bought foods that also can be contaminated with the botulinum toxins. Then the next is called as the enterogenic botulisms. You can get these from botulism if you have too much of Botox toxins which is injected during a cosmetic or a medical process. For example, when treating wrinkles, some people have had this type of botulism after getting counterfeit Botox treatment. The next is the adult intestinal botulisms. This is a very rare kind of botulisms. It's very similar to the infant botulisms. When the bacterial spores get into your intestines where they can grow, spread and reproduce, it's also called as a adult intestinal colonization. Adults with a serious health condition of the gut are most at a risk to death because of a botulism. So these are the different kinds and types of botulisms, and each and every types will cause in result a botulism disease.